What does it mean to lose everything in the time it takes to buy a loaf of bread? I left the house that morning with a grocery list scribbled on the back of an envelope, the kind of mundane task that anchors a life. The sun was out, the air crisp with autumn, and I hummed along to the radio as I drove to the store. My husband, David, was at home, probably tinkering with his old guitar or reading one of his dog-eared sci-fi novels. We'd been married for 12 years, and though the spark had dimmed, we were comfortable like a well-worn pair of shoes. I never imagined that in the span of an hour, my world would unravel. The grocery store was crowded, the usual Saturday chaos. I maneuvered through aisles, picking up eggs, milk, and the apples David loved. I even grabbed a bottle of his favorite wine, thinking we might open it tonight, maybe talk like we used to. The cashier smiled as she scanned my items, and I smiled back, unaware that I was standing on the edge of a cliff. I loaded the bags into my car, drove home, and pulled into our driveway. The house looked the same: white picket fence, slightly overgrown lawn, the porch swaying gently. But something felt off, like the air before a storm. I stepped inside, calling out, "David, I'm back." Silence answered me. The living room was empty, the TV off. His guitar leaned against the couch, untouched. I set the groceries on the kitchen counter and called again, my voice echoing in the stillness. That's when I saw a single sheet of paper on the table, folded neatly, my name written in David's careful handwriting. My heart thudded. I opened it, expecting a reminder or a joke, something trivial. Instead, the words hit me like a punch. "I'm sorry, Emily. I can't do this anymore. I need to find myself. Don't look for me." The grocery bag slipped from my hand, apples rolling across the floor. I read the note again, then again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less devastating. David was gone. His clothes, his books, his toothbrush gone. The closet gaped empty, the shelves stripped. It wasn't just that he'd left, he'd erased himself from our life. I sank to the floor, the note crumpled in my fist, and tried to make sense of it. We'd argued, sure, but nothing catastrophic. Had I missed something? Some sign that he was unraveling? The days that followed were a blur of grief and questions. I called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I contacted his friends, his coworkers, even his distant cousin in Ohio. No one had seen him. The police were sympathetic but unhelpful. Adults could leave, they said, and there was no sign of foul play. I wandered the house, searching for clues, replaying our last conversations. Had he seemed distant? Tired? I remembered him staring out the window one evening, lost in thought, but I'd chalked it up to a bad day at work. Now, every memory felt like a puzzle piece I couldn't fit together. A week later, I found something that changed everything. I was cleaning out the attic, desperate for distraction, when I stumbled across a small wooden box tucked behind a stack of old books. It was locked, but the key was taped to the bottom. Inside were letters not from David, but to him, written in a looping, unfamiliar script. They were from someone named Clara, dated years ago, before we met. The words were tender, intimate, full of promises. "We'll find a way to be together, you're my home." My stomach churned. Who was Clara? Why had David kept these? I dug deeper and found a photo. David, younger, laughing with a woman whose eyes sparkled with a joy I'd never seen in him. On the back, in the same handwriting, David and Clara, 2008. The discovery shattered me, but it also lit a fire. I needed answers. I scoured the internet, cross-referencing names and dates. Clara Bennett, I learned, was a painter who lived in a small town 3 hours away. Her online portfolio showed vibrant landscapes, but her bio was sparse, mentioning only a quiet life after years in the city. I drove there the next day, the letters and photo in my bag, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and desperation. What did she know about David's disappearance? Was she the reason he left? Clara's house was a quaint cottage, surrounded by wildflowers. When she answered the door, I recognized her immediately older, but still the woman from the photo. She looked startled but invited me in, her hands trembling slightly. Over tea, I poured out my story, showing her the note, the letters. Her face softened, and she sighed, a sound heavy with years of unspoken pain. I haven't seen David in over a decade, she said. We were in love once, but he chose you. He said he wanted a stable life, something I couldn't give him. Clara explained that she and David had met in college, their romance intense but volatile. They parted ways when she moved abroad to pursue her art, and he met me shortly after. She hadn't heard from him since, but the letters were hers, written during their final months together. He kept them, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know. I wanted to hate her, but her sadness mirrored mine. She wasn't the villain, she was just another piece of David's past he'd buried. As we talked, Clara mentioned something that stopped me cold. David had called her 2 weeks ago, out of the blue, sounding lost. He didn't say where he was, only that he was trying to remember who he was. She begged him to reach out to me, but he hung up. The revelation was a lifeline and a wound. He was alive, but he was running from me, from us. Clara offered to help, sharing contacts of mutual friends from their college days. One of them, a man named Tom, had seen David recently at a diner in a nearby town, looking disheveled but alive. I tracked down the diner, my hope flickering. The waitress remembered David'd been there, scribbling in a notebook, but he hadn't stayed long. She handed me a napkin he'd left behind, covered in fragmented thoughts. Who am I without her? Without anyone? I clutched it, tears blurring my vision. David wasn't just leaving me, he was lost in himself, searching for something I couldn't give him. I realized then that love, no matter how deep, can't anchor someone who doesn't know their own shore. Months passed, and I never found David. But I found something else: strength. I sold the house, unable to live in its emptiness, and moved to a small apartment filled with light. I started painting, inspired by Clara's work, pouring my grief into colors and shapes. I wrote letters to David, not to send, but to release. I forgave him, not for leaving, but for being human, flawed, and lost. I learned that love doesn't always mean holding on, sometimes it means letting go with grace. The grocery store became a ritual again, a small act of rebuilding. Each time I bought apples, I thought of David not with anger, but with a quiet wish that he'd find what he was searching for. I understood now that his note wasn't just a goodbye, it was a confession of his own brokenness. And in that understanding, I found my own way forward, one step, one breath, one bag of groceries at a time.